Hello, welcome to the Trews, True News you can trust. Subscribe here. It's 2015, beginning of a new year, but already we're in the territory of familiar stories. The world has been rocked by events in Paris, horrific terrorism, brutal murders of people that are just doing their jobs as cartoonists. If you've made up your mind that you understand this issue, then there's nothing else for you to watch. If there's such a thing as good and evil perpetrators doing bad stuff for no reason, then you've reached your conclusion. But if you're interested in working out why things like this are happening, how these situations are getting worse, and why we all feel afraid and under threat, watch the Trews, because we're going to examine it. Let's have a look at some of the coverage of these terrible events.
Mr. Speaker, I know that this House and this country stands united with the French people in our opposition to all forms of terrorism, and we stand squarely for free speech and democracy.
We're going to say things that are difficult for you to comprehend on some level now, but it's politically expedient for David Cameron that this has happened. I'm not saying that he goes out and goes, yes, this is good that there's been these murders, but watch how they use this story. Watch how they use it. I'm not saying that David Cameron is an inhuman monster and doesn't care about brutal, terrible murders. And you've got to know me. You know me. I hate violence of all kind. Let me just write it down in case you at any point get worried. Violence is wrong. Terrorism, bad. Got it there, just in case we get worried. Why is this happening? Why is it happening? It seems confusing to us, I think, because we have a myopic view of world events. Like, I've got to be honest, when I hear about there's been a bombing in Pakistan, I sort of have to make myself care a bit. I have to go, oh, that is bad. Because in my head, a village in Pakistan is not something I've got a strong image of. I can imagine an office in Paris, so I can fully, viscerally engage with that brutality. Oh, that is disgusting. Those people, they're just cartoonists, satirists. Freedom of speech is great value. When there's been a drone attack on a village in Pakistan, I have to make an effort to care. Now, we are living in a world where clearly the value for our media, the value of white lives is much, much higher. Of course white lives are sacred. Of course Christian lives or secular lives are sacred. Of course what those terrorists did is unforgivable and condemnable. But condemning, don't you think it's a bit of a full stop after, isn't it? Condemned. Oh good, what happens again? We'll condemn that as well. And we'll keep condemning as long as they're doing terror. Should we look at why these things might be happening? No. Let's just keep up the condemning. The condemning works for me. Now, obviously, you know my views on the murders themselves, but we do live in a climate where certain populations are being attacked and maligned. Like, the people that do these things, we have to accept that we are all part of this problem. We are all human beings. So when there is a mass rally, when people come together and Angela Merkel and Benjamin Netanyahu and David Cameron all march together, these are all people that the wars of the last 14 years were supported by. When all of us come together to condemn the violence, we have to similarly condemn the violence that leads to it. Tough on terrorism, tough on the causes of terrorism. What causes terrorism? What causes this to happen? Do you think, you can go this way with it if you want. You can go there's just some people in the world that are just mad terrorists for no reason, like artists. They just act to some inner inspiration and go out and do terror. That's your view, have that view. You don't need me, you're at your view. If you're actually confused about it, it might be to do with some of the stuff we saw on the Stop the War website. Here is a graph, and you know I love a graph, that shows you how violence has increased since the invasions of both Iraq and Afghanistan. This pie chart shows casualties from the war on terror, 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq. You can see Iraqi civilians make up the vast majority of deaths from the war on terror, or from this conflict as a whole. We don't look at the conflict as a whole, do we? There's another graph here, or sort of a map really, it's not a graph, I've showed you the lack of knowledge on it, that shows that where the threats of terrorism are greater is primarily in Muslim countries. It's Muslim countries that are suffering most, in spite of the emotions we're all feeling as a result of the murders in France, an identifiable Western metropolis. The place where you're most at risk is if you live in a Muslim country. So while the condemning is understandable, while the desire for revenge is understandable, it isn't a solution. We're creating more and more of these problems by refusing to look at what causes them. I'm not interested in the governments of the West using this to implement their own ends, using this to justify taking away more domestic freedom, to justify more spying, to justify more wars abroad, to justify more suspicion and division among the ordinary people of the world. Now, people will continually say, no, there's something like Rupert Murdoch. Do you want to be on Rupert Murdoch's side? Here's Rupert Murdoch's side. All Muslims should feel bad for this. All Muslims are to blame for this. So if that's your view, you're on Rupert Murdoch's side. The fact is, if like you or me decide I'm going to go down to school with a knife and start stabbing children, it's hard to stop people doing that. It's hard to stop people doing that. So I guess what we have to do is address the violence within us, and try to create communities where these events are less likely to happen. So what does that mean in practical terms? Don't support foreign violence in Muslim countries. Don't support CIA torture in Guantanamo and all of those other institutions. Don't tacitly support these things. And don't be suspicious and fearful of people that are different from you. The only thing we can do, the only power we have on a personal level is loving tolerance and a continued suspicion of both our media and of our politicians who have their own ends. The media just want to create stories and tacitly support the corporations that benefit from wars in foreign countries because they are the corporations that benefit from those wars. The politicians are always looking to make capital and augment their own power. What do you think, like when David Cameron and Merkel and all them are walking along hand in hand, this is helpful to their political ends. This is helpful to their image because for a moment we're having to go, oh, look at the humanity of the situation. So while, of course, terrorism is bad, violence is wrong of all kinds, we're not questioning that. We don't need to question that. And you might think, well, this isn't the time. This is the time for grieving and mourning. No, this is the perfect time to start looking at why do things like this keep happening and what can we, on a personal level, as human beings that are on this planet for a tiny amount of time, that are all connected to one another, that have more in common than we have that separates us, what can we actually do? There are violent people on both sides of this ideology and they are exacerbating it, and we, the people in the middle, have got to stop supporting them. We've got to stop fueling them. One of the favourite phrases of jihadis is we love death more than you love life, and that's what gives them their power. So we have to love life more. We have to love life more. We have to truly love freedom more. We have to truly love democracy more. We have to truly love one another more. That's the truth.
Is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the news. If the news was true, I want some Trews. Let's have some Trews.